Well, better late than never. Welcome to 5 Points of Articulation, where I review action figures and then articulate 5 points to help you decide if you want to add that figure to your collection. The 5 points I discuss are packaging, presentation, posability, playability, and price. I'm Jason, and if you enjoy my content, please like, share, subscribe, do all the YouTube rigmarole. Today, we're taking a long overdue look at the Crime Syndicate Superman of Earth 3, ULTRAMAN. Starting off with the packaging, an ULTRAMAN comes in a big giant window box. Did I say ULTRAMAN? I'm sorry. I meant Superman of Earth 3. This one, of course, is from the Crime Syndicate. Down here we have the barcode and wait, what? ULTRAMAN? I'm so confused. And if that wasn't backwards enough, even though this is the third figure we've looked at, it's actually the first one in the set. Back then, we didn't have any idea what the other figures were gonna be. I mean, come on, we knew who one of them was gonna be. This one has some pretty cool figure photography, which maybe oversells just how big this Starro is, but compared to the digital renders we'd eventually get, this looks just fine. Still, it is a pretty good shot, and for packaging, I'm giving the Ultra Superman of Earth 3 1 whole point. Moving on to presentation, an ULTRAMAN stands at 7 1/4 inches. First things first, and full disclosure, the reason why it took me so long to review this guy is because I originally had no intentions of buying him. I looked at the figure and said, not for me. Most of my issues zeroed around this area here. Even compared to the Rebirth body, which I've already been clear I'm not that crazy about, this diaphragm joint is just super gappy. I also really didn't like the diaper. For characters who wear a belt or have trunks to break it up, it isn't so bad, but for characters like this who are supposed to be wearing a form-fitting bodysuit, it just really stands out. I know some of you like this just fine, and we've had that conversation in the comments, but when I look at this, all I'm seeing is this. Also, for some reason, his wrist balls are particularly bad, and they definitely weren't this bad with Rebirth. They had to go out of their way to give him this Kryptonian carpal tunnel. To be honest, I also wasn't that crazy about the crest. It's comics accurate, it's just really thick. Admittedly, that's a pretty minor nitpick, but again, compared to Superman, which is fairly flush, it's kinda distracting. I also had some mixed feelings about the head. I like the basic general sculpt of it, but I'm a bit undecided on the heat vision eyes. Since he is an evil Superman, that does create a pretty cool aesthetic, and hey, there's no side eye. Honestly, the more I look at it, the more I like it. That said, the hairline does seem a bit low. On camera, the skin tones don't match, but in person and in natural lighting, you'll never notice. Just like the head, now that I have this figure in hand, it is honestly growing on me. I still don't love certain things about it, but the right poses and angles help. And hey, his boot tops were painted right. That's more than I can say for Rebirth. I also really like the cape. It's nice and flexible. I do wish it was a little bit thinner, but that's just more to do with him being back heavy. Despite the fact that it's growing on me, I'm sorry to say that I still don't exactly like it. Still, I don't think it's all bad, so for presentation, I'm giving ULTRAMAN half a point. Moving on to posability, and no complaints there. ULTRAMAN's head's in a dumbbell joint. He can look up this far, which is pretty good. Can't really look down, unfortunately. He does, however, get a bit of tilt, and all the way around. Moving on down, he has swivel hinge shoulders that raise up over 90 degrees, forward and back with the rotator cuff, bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, and I think I've talked enough about these. Shifting the torso, and I've talked a lot about this too. That being said, he can arch back a fantastic amount, great for flying poses, and I will admit that gappy diaphragm does allow him to hunch forward a little bit better than usual. Naturally, he can also tilt and twist. Below the big silver waist balls, an ULTRAMAN has the typical McFarlane hips. They can kick just over 90 degrees, and do a super split. And then moving down, we have very crunchable double jointed knees, toe articulation, and again, the new and improved McFarlane ankle balls that can swivel, hinge, and pivot. For all my nitpicks of this figure, one thing I definitely won't complain about is articulation. For posability, I'm giving ULTRAMAN 1 whole point. Moving on to playability, and ULTRAMAN comes with a trading card and a figure stand. If you want to know more about him, bust out your magnifying glass and pause here. Interestingly enough, unlike most Superman figures, he doesn't come with a flight stand, nor does he come with alternate hands. Luckily, the fists are good for both flying and fighting. He does, however, come with this Starro. As with the others, you can wrap it around his chest. If, like me, however, you prefer your Starro to be a bit more face-sized, you can put them on your quarter-scale collection. Of course, the main bit is the Starro Build-A-Piece. On this side, it kind of looks like Mickey Mouse. Combining it with what we've already gotten, here we go. I gotta say, I'm really impressed with how McFarlane's handled the seams with this. It's hard to tell on camera, but the colors don't match quite exactly. But honestly, this thing looks awesome. But playability is more than just bug-eyed, mind-controlling starfish monsters. It's also about how well your figure plays with others. Starting off with the Crime Syndicate, and here we have Owlman, and here we have Superwoman. Switching over to Batman, and here we have Detective Comics 1000, the Battle Damage Grey Capullo version, 3 Jokers, Page Punchers, and my own custom Hush. And then for a couple of villainous Batmans, and here we have the Batman of Zur-En-Arrh, and the Batman Who Laughs. Rounding out the Trinity, and here we have Wonder Woman. This one's the New 52 version by DC Collectibles. Here we have the Death Metal version, and the one designed by Todd McFarlane himself. For the rest of the Justice League, and here we have the Flash from DC Essentials, and DC Multiverse. Here we have the DC Multiverse 2-pack version of Green Lantern, and Endless Winter Aquaman with his poor trident. For a Superman supporting character, and here we have the DC Essential Supergirl, and then for some other Superman villains, and here we have Bizarro, Lex Luthor, Superboy Prime, notice how similar their capes are, General Zod, and this guy. Also, here's the Warhammer Necron Warrior, which I use for Metallo. For some 7-inch scale comparisons from the House of Ideas, and here we have the Marvel Select Captain America, Wolverine, Thor, and Hulk. For a relative scale comparison, here's Ultraman with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. Of course, the lack of Superman figures during that section can mean only one thing: head swaps. First up, and here he is with Action Comics 1000. Out of the gate, this looks pretty good. It's hard to tell on camera, but the skin tones are slightly off, but you could definitely get away with it. The other way around is a little bit trickier because of different styles of peg holes. For a recent pickup, and here we have Dark Knight's Death Metal. Not gonna lie, this was the head swap that made me cave in and get the Death Metal Superman. Since both figures had heat vision eyes, I was kinda curious about how they'd look. You'll have to do a bit of touch up, but I think this is a much better use of this head. If you're curious about Cavill, and here you go, really makes you wonder what a live action version of the Crime Syndicate would have been like. Definitely would be an interesting direction to go in the movies. Other way around, and here you go. It does beg the question, if this head did look like any actor, who do you think it looks like? And here we are with the black costume. I'm not gonna bother with the other way around because we've already pretty much seen it, but I've got to admit this does look pretty cool. Speaking of the black costume, I know it's a bit out of order, but here we have the solar suit from Superman and Lois. You might not know this, but I'm a really big Star Trek fan. Thanks to the Mirrorverse, I associate facial hair with evil versions of characters from alternate dimensions. Conversely, this would be fine with a repaint, and it's probably a good time to mention that popping that spiky hair on and off is starting to hurt my fingers. Here we have Rebirth, and even though the sculpt's the same, the paint does match up better than Action Comics 1000. Other way around, and thanks to the hair, this actually better fits my image of New 52 and Rebirth Superman. Give it a repaint and this actually might work. Next up, and here we have Page Punchers. Honestly, this isn't too bad. It's a bit small, but he also looks more sinister than our regular Superman. As usual though, the other way around is sadly too big. And lastly, the all-new gold label Hush. This is an evil Superman. The skin tones match up perfectly, and it makes me finally realize why I don't like the head that comes with it. The facial expression. The sculpt is fine and it would make for a pretty good Superman head, but if you're gonna have the heat vision eyes, you gotta have some kind of emotion in the face to go with it. I've said it before and I'll say it again, what sells me on this particular set is Starro. Not just the big guy, but also the little ones that I can use with other figures. Things like a flight stand would have been nice, but with as many as we have from other figures, it hardly seems necessary. For playability, I'm giving Ultraman 1 whole point. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. The entire Crime Syndicate wave is a Target exclusive, which retails for $25, but I found this one on clearance for $8. And honestly, it's kind of worth it just for Starro. For price, I'm giving Ultraman 1 whole point for a grand total of 4.5 out of 5. For more Superman head swaps, check out this one on the all-new Hush Superman, or this one on Page Punchers. As of this recording, we just learned the Power Ring is the final figure, and you can best be sure that I'll be here to check it out. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.